Hi, I'm Parker.
And I'm Tim.
And this is the Rage Podcast, where today we're going to talk a little bit about morality and the difference between morality and the legal system, pretty much, and where those two contrast.
And the difference between what is legal and what is moral to do. You know, when you're making a decision, you're thinking, I'd like to do this, I want to stay away from that, I don't want any part of whatever. You know, there are legal considerations and there are moral considerations. And I think a lot of people want to put those two things together, yet I'm not sure they fit together as seamlessly as we may like.
So, Tim, what is an example that we could be able to base the episode around a little bit of what we're talking about here today?
Okay. Well, one of the things that you're thinking about is thinking about something that is good, but the law should have nothing to say about it. And I guess my example would be the environment. Okay, I think we all would agree conserving the environment is good. You know, clean up after yourself, make responsible use of resources, and all those kind of things. Very important to do, and I think we all agree with that. However, I don't know that the government passing stringent regulations and a lot of these things is going to accomplish what they set out to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to put so many laws and rules in there where I think the private sector would be able to, you know, address those concerns and make sure that we get where we need to be. So I guess that's an example where something is the morally right thing to do, unquestioned, but I'm not sure it's the legal right thing to do because you're slamming down a lot of regulations that may or may not have anything to do with the problem at hand, where a lot of times we'll see climate change is blamed for everything from, well, everything. I mean, there's no range. It's basically blamed for everything, and I'm just not sure that, you know, while it's a thing we should all care about and a thing we should all address, I'm not sure that the sun monster has become such the danger that it's made out to be, and a lot of the regulation that's there to protect us from it, I'm not sure is effective.
So the question I'm asking is, what do we do then if, so you have, say, a big corporation that is a manufacturer and is contributing to a lot of the environmental problems.
Okay.
So what do we do? Can we do anything, or is that the company's right to do that?
Well, I think in that case, regulation could be used to do that, but it's got to be regulation from the fact that the people want something else to happen. You know, if there's a thing out there where a factory or something is doing that, and it's proven that has become a problem, and there's science behind that, then there are boycotts and other social ways of doing that. But I'm just not sure that government regulation is the best way to go about enforcing morality, because the standards of what should be legal and the standards of what is moral are never going to match up, because we're never going to agree what that should be. Because some people say absolutely pump out all the smoke you want. Other people are like, you know, one puff cloud of smoke comes out and shut the whole thing down.
And we all know that the lawmakers are very moral people.
Do we know that, Parker? Apparently Parker has a higher view of them than I do, which really shocks me, to be honest. But I feel like, you know, one of the things that really aggravates me about the environment thing, since that seems to be where we're going, is, they want to talk about carbon tax. Mm-hmm. Does the idea of pollution become less dangerous if I pay for it? Does the world's like, oh, I didn't realize, you know, you bought the stipend here, or you bought the indulgence, and you're able to now do. I didn't know that's how it worked.
Yeah, that is. I think it's very important to know that, you know, but morality it shifts, and that's where the law does have its role in how everyone's moral views will kind of lean different ways.
Sure, and we have to decide what is it collectively as a civilization. You know, what are we willing to accept? You know, nobody. Honestly, you will not find two people who are going to agree on the amount of pollution that's acceptable, because, I mean, whatever it is, they're going to disagree. So when we come to standards, the law has to be able to set standards that the community can agree upon. Not that's crammed down by special interests and that kind of stuff. It's when the entire society or the entire community can come together and set those things. That's when we get the legal standpoint. The problem runs into, though, when you get activists and people who are manipulating the system, perhaps putting information in there that's not entirely accurate, because, again, I'm not a scientist. I don't know anything about pollution except that it's bad. Yeah. So I'm not really qualified to say whether a little bit of smoke or a lot of smoke or carbon dioxide or whatever it is a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know, but I do know everybody has to do their part and be able to be a part of that. Let me give another example. Okay, we talked about something that was bad and shouldn't necessarily be illegal. What about something that's good? I think we all would agree that something that's good is if you're sitting home by yourself, getting absolutely blind drunk. I think we all would agree that's a bad thing. But as long as you're not, driving or in domestic violence or doing something like that, if you're home by yourself, it's you. It should be legal. The law should have nothing to say about that.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, it's absolutely wrong.
Yeah.
If I found out somebody was doing that, morally I could say, no.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to support that. So there's a difference between what we all can say is wrong, and that's not the government's job, is to pass judgment on everything, to set a law about everything, to set a standard about everything, because not everything is the government's business. The only time that we can talk about community standards is when it affects the community.
So
and that's the difference.
To go back a little bit, so what about in the church?
Okay.
So is there laws in the church? Would you say that the church has laws, or is it all based upon the standard of morality of its members?
Well, there are certainly expectations that we are expected to abide by. They're outlined in the Book of Discipline, which is this great big book. There's a couple of them on the thing here, right here behind Parker, that are there. And the Book of Discipline's almost has got many pages as the Bible does. So there's a lot of information in there on everything from morality to practices to how to run a church to how to pray and all that kind of stuff. It's all in there. So what that is it's 200 years of tradition and experience and all these things coming together to create a standard of what it means to be, at least in our case, a United Methodist.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, there's stuff in the discipline I don't agree with.
Yeah.
So you're never going to find consensus, and that's why we're better off to try to change hearts than we are to try to change minds, because that's a little bit that in the long run is what changes things. And I think that's the same approach that Jesus used. Jesus often talked about caring about other people, but if you go back and read, every time Jesus talked about giving or caring, it was always about changing the person who was actually doing it, not to the person who was receiving. And I think that's where we lose it a little bit. Nobody gets transformed by saying, "Oh, the law says I can only drive 55, so I'm just going to drive 55."
So by actively showing the good that comes from the law.
Yeah.
So carrying yourself, not saying one thing and doing the other.
Right.
So how you mentioned, bringing someone into so would you say changing someone's morality is possible? You can change? Morality changes every day, kind of.
Yeah, it changes.
It shouldn't.
It should, but you change your perception of it. See, morality is about transforming yourself. The legal question is about keeping society safe.
Yeah. So
if I think it's moral for me to go shoot my neighbor because I'm mad at him, the law is going to be like, yeah, we're not really good with that, and neither is anybody else.
Yeah.
So if somebody has the law should only come in to effect when somebody's morality has
completely gone away.
Flown the coop.
Doesn't exist.
And again, everybody falls victim to that. Murdering somebody is obviously an extreme example, but saying driving 64 and a 55.
Well, even not that, but in a little bit more personal is I know a lot of people have the moral standard that you should be trying to live a little bit more healthier, and but I still drive through McDonald's all the time, and I'm obviously not the healthiest of guys. So right. But I strive. My moral standards is I should probably be a little bit more healthy.
Right. Well, when Bloomberg out in New York wanted to pass the thing where you couldn't buy a 64-ounce drink or whatever, that's wrong. That's not. The government doesn't exist for that purpose.
Yeah. So.
Well, in order to talk a little bit about the difference between morality and what it means to be a moral person and what it means to follow the law, we are now going to go next level with Parker.
Legality is the law system of rules that state or enforces regulated behavior through penalties. But morality is a body of principles that define what is good and what is bad conduct through personal values.
Thanks for that, Parker. And what we want to kind of wrap up here with today is a little discussion on the difference between the law saying something's wrong and morality saying something's wrong, okay? Why can the law say you can't shoot your neighbor, which the law is pretty clear on that one, but we disagree with the law saying, well, you can't buy a 64-ounce drink. Where does that line exist? Yeah. And that's the discussion that we want to have about, how can some things be wrong, and why did something being more heinous or more evil make it more wrong, which it does, and have a discussion on that.
So where does the government get that role from? So I mean, obviously the government here is the body that makes the laws. So where does the government get the right to make certain laws, but we're saying they don't have the right to make other laws? So we're giving them, where is that line drawn, and how do we figure that out?
Well, the law is an expression of a society's morality, okay? Like the bargain basement, okay? Most people will say killing is bad, which I think that's pretty universal.
Yeah.
Okay? But most people will also say, I'd like for my standard to be higher than I don't kill anyone.
Yeah.
I want something more than that. So we can all agree murder is bad, but personally, I want to do better than that. So where does the law get the right to say I'm not allowed to murder somebody, but we don't agree that the law can say I can't buy a 64-ounce drink? In the fact that society is going to agree murder is wrong across the board. Or at least the vast majority, I guess we'll say. But the rest of society may be like, kind of liking that 64-ounce drink. Not everybody's going to go with that. I might weigh my options and decide I want to drink a 64-ounce drink. And as a society, we don't have anything to say about that because most people in that society don't agree with it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's why we call our officials who make the laws our elected officials. So we elect the officials, including the president, all the way down, and our elected officials then appoint the judges to decide how these laws work. So through elections, we get to decide what our morality is. So somebody stands up and says, okay, I'm for this, and I'm against this. That's why we have the debates. That's why we have the conversations. We as a country say, okay, most of us are saying, this guy, we agree with what he has to say. Therefore, he now is the one that gets to call the shots. Does everyone agree with him? I think recent history has shown that there's no such thing as across the board agreement.
100% agreement.
Right.
Yeah.
But the majority of however that majority is defined gets to say that's how it is, and that person then gets to decide what the bargain basement morality is. About not killing, and then and then the questions go on. About universal health care, is that a thing? How do we define gender? How do we define who gets to use what bathroom? How do we get to define who gets to marry who? How do we define what we do with babies in the womb? All those kind of things are decided that way.
So is morality the top dog?
I think morality is the number one motivator of the individual. Mm-hmm. And then as an individual, okay, so I'm one person and I think this. And I say, okay, I think this is wrong. Well, Parker says, I agree, now we're two.
Yeah.
So we go across the hallway, we talk to Alina, we say, Alina, this. Alina says, yeah, I agree with you. Now we have three. Eventually, however many people there are in the state of Ohio, if half of them or more agree, then we're going to vote for this certain candidate or establish this certain law or agree with this certain standard, then it becomes law. And at that point, then, we as a society have said, this is our bargain basement. Not our top level. This is not our goal. This is our starting point. That we all agree that, you're not allowed to shoot your neighbor.
Yeah.
Okay. or whatever the law. That's where the law comes from.
Well, that's starting to make sense now. I was a little bit confused at the beginning. I was like,
yeah.
But yeah, okay, it has come together.
Okay, good. And I think that's where it comes from. So I think if we're talking about the chicken or the egg, I think in the morality or legal, I think morals come first.
Okay.
Okay? And as a society grows, and back when, the population of the world was very small, we needed a lot less laws because there was a lot less people to deal with. You didn't need property laws. You didn't need any vehicle laws because there weren't any.
Yeah.
Those kind of things.
So morals, how you said they were like what motivated you. So motivated you to obviously, and you did the comparison of like the election, and that's how you vote based upon your morals. Yeah. So that makes sense, but so the morals are kind of like your personal laws, and then the body, how you mentioned, if 50% or more agree, the majority then follows those laws that have been based the foundation of their morality, kind of.
Right, and the way that works then is legally, let's take abortion as an example of this, okay? A lot of people vote on a candidate based on abortion alone, whether pro or against, whichever, okay? But if I go and I say I'm against abortion and I go and vote for the anti-abortion candidate and the pro-abortion candidate wins, that doesn't mean I have to go get an abortion. Obviously, that's not going to apply to me anyways. Yeah. But that doesn't require everybody getting an abortion.
Well,
it
I
just
think
means
the better
it's allowed.
example is gay marriage.
Sure.
It can be legal, but it doesn't mean that all.
Yeah, that's right. Everybody
that all
has to get
be
married,
like that,
right. Right.
So.
Yeah, that's the bargain basement. Should it be allowed? It could be allowed, but that doesn't mean everybody has to agree with it.
Yeah.
It just means that we as a society have decided to give permission to that. Again, whether or not that's moral or whatever doesn't matter. It's the legal question.
And that's interesting, because if you go back and look at how Jesus' lifetime was on Earth, a lot of the things going on in his time. Mm-hmm. Look at the Gentiles and everything. Mm-hmm. They made their kind of own laws almost. I mean, they weren't very golden moral standards by any means, but
one of the great examples Jesus gave of this was when he healed a man with a withered hand on the Sabbath. Where did he take him? He didn't take him. Okay, dude, I'm going to help you out. Let's go over here behind the tree where nobody's watching, and I'll Shazam you over here. No, he says, hey, Pharisees, are you guys watching? Look what I'm about to do on the Sabbath. And he heals the guy. Mm-hmm. I mean, he didn't make any secret about it, because he was saying, it is moral for me to help this man right now, even though your law says no. So, I mean, that's what we call nonviolent resistance is a term that we've seen. That's what that is. And so Jesus healed that man to say, it is moral for me to help this man right now. But it wasn't legal. So I mean, there's a lot of questions in that, a lot of rabbit holes you can go down. But it's an interesting conversation, because if 2020 has shown us anything, and I know this is an overused phrase, but if it has shown us anything, it has shown us that
we've given the government a lot more.
We've given the government a lot of power. There's a lot of laws in there that some of us are going, I don't know if the government has the right to shut us down for an entire year. Yeah. And that kind of stuff. Now again, we can debate that, but the thing is, at no point did the government say you have to go out and go out to eat, or you have to go somewhere, but they did prevent you from doing that.
So,
which one were they allowed to say? Were they allowed to say, well, you probably should stay home till we figure this thing out, but we can't enforce that? Again, that's a moral question. There's a lot of people out there who said, what mask? I'm not wearing a mask.
Yeah. And
there are other people who are still wearing masks and staying home and stuff. So everybody gets to make their own choice in this moral system, and that's how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
So, and again, where does the law come in and that kind of stuff? Yes, there's a place for law, and we need laws as a society. Believe me, I entirely get that. I'm not trying to say that
the law is there for when somebody's morality completely goes out the window. That's I think what we decided.
Yes,
based it is what the kind of definition that we have given. The laws are there to prevent someone's horrible morality.
Yeah, when somebody's morality doesn't prevent them from hurting someone or hurting themselves, that's when the law steps in.
That's when the law steps in.
Now, where is that point? Again, that's debatable, but it's an interesting question, in the relationship between morality and legal, where's that line? And sometimes we don't agree with that. I mean, there's been plenty of times, and I'm sure you too, Parker, where a line gets drawn that we don't agree with. So.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, anything more you want to say about that?
If you want to find a good morality, there's a great book called the Bible where you'll see a good character. His name's Jesus, and he's got a perfect morality. I'll tell you.
And we highly recommend him.
Highly recommend looking into some of the things he says.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we missed you guys last week. We're glad to be back with you, and hopefully we'll get some more Raised podcasts upcoming soon. You got anything more?
Hopefully see you next week.
Have a great day, everybody.